with some of the most interesting backstories, some of the hardest lives. I get to see narratives that I would never experience. Like, I didn't grow up poor and homeless, and I didn't grow up doing drugs. So how could I write a character that's had that kind of background? Well, I see it every day. So I get to pull from the people that I see, and I get to pull from the experiences that I see every day and the hardships, and I get to see humanity working and failing and trying to recover every day. And so when I write my characters, I try really hard to pull from the stuff that I've seen, because it makes them more real. Like, when you develop a character, you want it to be something you can relate to, right? So my main character in my book, she screws up all the time. She makes bad decisions. She's selfish. She doesn't get along well with people. She doesn't know how to relate and accept help. And when I was writing her in the very beginning, I was a selfish little high school student who thought I knew everything and couldn't take help because I didn't need the help. And so I integrated that into my story. So when people read her, she's real to them. She's not just a character in a book, because she makes realistic mistakes. And when you write characters, when you write your fantasy writing, since you're making something up completely, you want to pull in what you know, pull in what you've seen, what you've experienced, your own mistakes, your own triumphs, to work them into your character so that they are as real as they can possibly be, and then people relate to them a lot more, which is exciting what I get to do with my day job a little bit, because I get to see all sorts of people. Some of my favorite people are the people I take to jail because they're drunk every night. But they are the most fantastic human beings, and they have the best stories. And if you just give them the time of day to listen to them, sometimes they're the best people ever. And you want to look at your world and see the people that you're interacting with, because sometimes they're the best inspiration for anything you're ever going to write. So there's my advice for character writing. Pull from your real life, because it's the best inspiration. I wanted to talk a little bit about publishing and getting published, because it's quite difficult, and if you're not prepared for that challenge, it can be quite depressing, right? So I published this book a couple years ago with a different publisher. It didn't do well. The publisher, I didn't do all my research. Wasn't the best decision I could have done. So now I'm republishing it with a much better publisher. And I'm relaunching a new cover. I'm going through a whole other editing round, so that's exciting. But when you try to publish something, whether it's a short story or poetry or artwork that you submit for covers, a full novel, a series, a standalone, whatever it is, you're gonna have to get your dreams crushed a lot first. So just have a hard skin, guys, because it's rough out there. The process is long and it's tiring. You submit to anybody that you can possibly find that might work for you. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of, it didn't resonate with me, or didn't fit our kind of style of the day, or no. You're going to get a lot of those emails. But you're going to keep trying, read a lot of books about how to get published, about how to write a query letter. If you can't write a query letter, which is a lot more difficult than a resume, but similar, if you can get a good query letter down and get some good editing, that's your ground base. Get that stuff settled and figured out first, and then basically send it to everybody you can think of. And then don't get discouraged, because this thing the first time I got it published, it took a year. Second time, it's taken another 2 years of just submitting to everybody. And I'm still getting no's from people that I had submitted to and I forgot about. So don't let that get you down. I think we're good for questions, unless there was something specific you guys wanted me to go over still.
Can I butt in with a question really quick before we get to the students' questions? You said that
Sure.
there were a bunch of things that you would recommend doing, writing what is a query letter to for like kids who've never heard that term before?
Oh, sure. I guess we could start with that, yeah. So a query letter it's a lot like a resume, kind of like they're a pain to write, because you have to write your hook, which is basically like 3 sentences of why you should even bother to keep reading about what I'm going to tell you. Then you need to do a summary of your entire novel, your 300-page novel. You got to summarize it down into like a paragraph and a half that makes the big wigs at these publisher companies go, yeah, that's a good book. And then a quick little bio about who you are and how everything that you've done in your life pertains to writing, summed up with a "please publish my book, please, please" paragraph. It doesn't sound like begging. It doesn't sound very difficult, but you have to craft that hook. It's basically like a book blurb on the back of your book, but much shorter. You have to get 2-3 sentences that describes your book, describes what you're doing, make someone want to read it, and then make someone want to keep reading your little pamphlet about it. They're extremely difficult to write, and it's hard. I don't know about you guys for writers, but I hate writing and talking about myself. It's very difficult. So, and they're like, okay, talk up your book. I'm like, here, right? Like, just read it. So, right? They're like, what it's about? And I'm like, So you got to really be able to look at what you've done from like a third party point of view almost. So you can look at it, skim it down into like 2-paragraph summaries that covers everything that happens, that gets you the start to finish, gets all of the highlights, and reveals the ending without it sounding like a 3-page summary. It's extremely difficult. I hate writing them. But that's the basis of a query letter. They change a little bit depending on what format you want to use, but basically the hook: please keep reading my page. This is what my book's about. This is what I'm about. Please publish my book.
So
that's a query letter.
What are some of the things that you would recommend, like, to avoid if you're looking to publish work? The end of the semester, I try to give students an outlet for if they want to publish work. And there are like safe places where students can get stuff published, non-exploitative things like the Claremont Review and Teen Ink, and like magazines that are like geared toward like publishing first-time writers. But what are some things that like might look attractive to somebody who's trying to get published but are actually terrible ideas, if you know?
Oh, like cliche ideas, stuff like that it sounds like a great idea, but then everybody else has already done it a million times.
Oh, like, I don't mean, like, stuff you're writing. I mean, like, places you shouldn't submit to, or, like, what are some red flags of, like, publishers or publishing houses that are not good?
Okay, so if they ask for money, not good. So there are several types of publishing in this new and advanced, confusing world. There's traditional publishing, which is like your Daw books, your Bain books, your Thor, like the big houses like that. That's traditional publishing, where you submit the book, they do everything, they pay for everything, they make everything look fancy, and then ta-da, there's a book. There's small press publishing, which is what I'm going with. It's basically that, but on a much smaller scale. They're much more selective with what they take because they can't afford to do a lot of other books. They usually only publish a couple dozen books a year. That's a small press. Then there's the hybrid press, which is very similar to a small press, where it's a smaller company. They do a smaller amount of books a year, but you will pay a portion of the editing cost. So, I mean, if that's something you want to do, go for it, whatever. But you do pay a portion of the cost, and then they publish the book for you, and you get higher returns because you've invested in the book. And then there's the vanity press. Vanity press is basically where you pay for everything, and then they shove out a book without vetting it, without any kind of editing control, without proper graphics. That's a vanity press. So when you're submitting to people and they say, like, author contributes so much money for it to be published, make sure that you're reading their fine print. Because if they don't vet your book, if they don't offer any editing, all you're doing is paying for them to put it in a hardback and throw it out. And they're not going to do any kind of quality control. So a hybrid press and a vanity press, they look very similar. Make sure that if you do start talking to them and they ask for any kind of money, ask sample contracts so you know what your money is being used for. Ask what their editing purposes are. Like, does it go through an editing round? Does it go to the managers? Does it go through the editing managers? Like, who reads this and decides this is good to be published? Because if they'll take anybody and anything, then what's your money going to be good for, right? You don't want to get thrown in with someone who wrote trash just because, I mean, you didn't write trash, but do you want to be associated with something else, right? So just make sure you really read and vet how they're coming across the people they're writing and whether or not they're editing. and then what your money's being used for. Those are the big things. Just my first book was published with a vanity press, and I did not realize it was a vanity press. And so when I got my book, I was all excited, and my name was backwards on the spine. They had done no editing. It was rough. It was rough. So make sure when they ask for any kind of money, make sure you know what it is you're paying for and why you're paying for it, and make sure that they vet your book and that they edit it, or your short piece or your story or poem or whatever it is you're submitting to them. That would be my biggest red flag watch.
Sweet, good advice. Thanks for that. I think we can turn it over to students now who have prepared questions for you about any and all sorts of things. So
Okay.
So I know what some of the questions are. I don't know what all of them are. So some of them might be surprising to everybody in the room, but nothing school inappropriate, obviously. So who'd like to ask a question? Aaron, go ahead. Do you want to go up before the Skype so she can see you, or do you want to be like a bodiless voice? Okay, I'll let you guys decide what you want to do. If your camera's shy, you don't have to.
I was just wondering how you beat procrastination, because I struggle a lot with that.
So I also struggle with that. I am the queen of procrastination. I make a list when I want to stop procrastinating because I feel like that helps me. Really, you have to, at the end of the day, you have to find a reason to write, right? So I mean, I have a couple short pieces that I've been working on for years, but I have no end game for them, so I have no drive to finish them. So you have to find that drive that makes you want to go somewhere with it. Because if you force yourself to write because you're like, I need to write, like Stephen King says, write, but you have no drive to, you're gonna write crap.
Yeah.
So find that drive, find your moment, find your muse or whatever it is that gives you oomph to go, and then just write when that happens. Sometimes I won't write for months, and then some days I'll binge write for 3 days and get half a book written. So really, it's just you gotta find whatever works for you.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, that's a really good tip. For this class, I artificially force you to write for a grade. We have deadlines, and we have the end of the semester we have to write for. But hopefully you've been doing something like that in your journal, and I try to stress that. When you start a piece, if you don't know where it's going, walk away from it for a little while. Take a couple of weeks. Go people watch. Go do some things that might trigger some ideas, and that is really good writing practice to be able to.
Exactly. With this book, I had no idea. My big baddie antagonist guy he wasn't really doing it for me, so I stopped writing it for about 1.5 years, and then I had this really freaky dream, and I woke up and I was like, dude, that's gonna be the best thing ever, and that's what spurred this book into the form it is now. I stopped working on it for a year because it was stupid. I couldn't figure out where I was gonna go with it. The scenes didn't seem realistic because the stakes weren't high enough because my bad guy wasn't bad enough, and then I had this really freaky dream about wolves with red eyes and ta-da! And so you just gotta find, sometimes if you walk away from it, it comes back better.
Sweet. Go for it, Camille. This is the ghost of Camille Fisher. She's not going to be on camera. But...
She can see me.
Okay,
cool.
Oh, hi, there you are.
I said, do you make and put together your books yourself? Do you get to pick the paper and how to make the cover and stuff?
Okay, so that depends on your publisher a lot. With this one, I think the way they work with the designs, usually you, sorry, I just drank a bunch of tea and I have the burps. You give them an idea of what you want, and then they put together a couple of proofs, and then you kind of work from there and pick it. As for the paper, they usually pick the paper all on their own. Usually whatever's most cost effective for their style. But the covers, you get to work with them. I mean, it's not here's your cover, go with it. You get to kind of when you order a painting or something, you're I want this, and then they drop 3 mocks, and you go, okay, that, and that's usually how it works.
There are some publishing houses I know that let you customize
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you go up to even DAW, even the really big ones, if you go up to them and say, hey, my friend or I or whatever did this drawing, and this is what I want my cover to look like, they will use that. So I mean, it all just depends on what you come with.
And how much I guess you're willing to pay in some cases.
And how much you what? Sorry.
How much you're willing to pay in some cases too, I think, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We have another.
Hi.
Hello.
So, when I'm kind of also writing a novel right now in a way, or like a story, the thing I find hardest is like the character that you associate with yourself, the one that's the most relatable, is like the easiest to write, but like I base my characters off of people in my real life experience, and even though I know those people really well, I still find it hard to like, you know, connect those people. And how do you like write other characters that you don't necessarily relate to super well, but like you know how to build them, if that makes sense?
Sure. Yeah, you need to make them relevant to your story. So a lot of my side characters in my books are based off of different aspects of different people, but they need to have their roles, right? So you could have one that's that you loosely base off of your best friend, and in your book he might be like the protector of the group or something. Make him relevant to what it is that you're writing, so then you want to connect with him because you need him. So make your side characters, they don't just push the plot along, they also carry your character with it. So make sure that if you make them relevant to your story and make them relevant to you, then it's easier to write them because you'll need them. Okay. If that helps you.
Yeah.
That's usually how I do it.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go for it. Aaron's got the floor again.
So, how long do you think it usually takes you to write a chapter or a few?
Oh Lord. Some chapters I bust out in a couple of minutes. Some take me months. It really depends on how much I'm procrastinating, like there are some scenes where I know, like start to finish, this is how the conversation's going. I've already planned it out in my brain. We're good. We've got to stick it on paper. And then there's other ones where, like, I'm terrible at exposition scenes. I hate reading them. I hate writing them. They're boring, but they're certainly necessary. So those ones take me longer because I just don't like to write them. So those ones, like if it's a whole chapter about explaining something and building up to the next action piece, that'll take me days or months to bust that one out. But if it's like a good conversation between my two main characters and my ship's getting it on, then that one's coming and going, right? So it all just depends on what you're writing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and you guys don't have to raise hands or anything. You can just go right on up, or you can call out your question. I trust that we can do this the democratic way.
On a good day, like on a good writing day, like how long does it take you to, like, how much do you write and how long does it take? Like on a good day. On a good
writing day, if I am just putting it out, I can a couple of hours and I could probably get 10 or so pages. I mean, again, it comes back to what am I writing? Am I writing conversation? Because that flows faster. Or am I writing like a fight scene, or is it a travel scene? But if I'm feeling the mojo, I can usually get a couple good hunks of pages out in about an hour, 2 hours. It just depends on the flow and what it is. Like there are some where I'll be going and going, and then I have to stop and like research saddles because there are different types of saddles for different types of writing. And then kink goes my plan, and then I'm lost in the maze of Google for 3 hours, getting completely sidetracked by like horse names and braids, and then I'm back. And so stay focused is one. But like if I'm just writing and chugging along, I can a couple dozen pages in a couple hours. Just it depends also on how fast you can type and write. So
to kind of go off of Camille's question, I have a follow-up question. I know just from having taught this class for a few years, I know from talking to different authors that different people have different opinions on this. But what is the hardest type of scene to write? Is it a fight scene? Is it one where okay? So Payne had this question. Payne, you go ahead and phrase it how you want to, because it's your question.
Okay.
Payne's taking over because I stole his question.
What is the hardest thing for you to write?
Exposition scenes. I suck at exposition scenes because I think they're boring. It's hard for me to, like, you have a whole bunch of information that you need your reader to know, or else the next couple pages aren't going to mean jack to them. So I just want to do like an information dump and be like, ta-da, history lesson, but nobody wants to read a history lesson unless you're a history major. So exposition scenes are super hard for me to write because I got to figure out a way to like work it into conversation, work it into things that they discover, and like ta-da moments, and I just want to like give it to you all so I can keep going. So I struggle with those. Like, I also don't like to read them. Those are the ones where I skip over everything, and then I flip through the pages, and I'm really confused. I have to go back and like read the paragraph I just skipped, and then so those are what I struggle with. But like a lot of people struggle with fight scenes because there are a lot of motions and a lot of pieces involved in them. And here's my advice with fight scenes. I've heard a lot of people struggle with fight scenes. If you don't know how to fight, don't write a fight scene. Go, like, have your friend hit you in the face so you know what it feels like, okay? Because getting hit in the face, like, not that I'm advocating violence, but, like, getting hit in the face sucks. Getting hit in, like, even, like, your jaw or just, like, a grape, it sucks. And you don't bounce back from that, like, haha, unless you've been trained to do it, right? So if you're going to write, like, if whatever you're writing relies on a lot of fighting, take a quick intro class, Google it, watch some YouTube videos or something so you know how the body moves, so you know how it reacts when it's hit, so you know how to fall. Like, that would be my hint for fight scenes. If that's something you struggle with, at least Google how to street fight or something, or watch a couple videos, because the body moves in weird ways that you wouldn't think. And sometimes fight scenes, I'm reading them and I'm like, oh, you've never been hit in the face, have you? Because you wouldn't just bounce back like that. So that's my advice.
I think that advice carries over to other things too, because I've sometimes read people's stories where, you know, like football is central to the plot. And it's like, oh, I don't know that this person actually knows all the rules to football. And like, you can kind of tell when somebody's faking it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, for sure. Whatever you're going to write, make sure you know it. Like, I love horse. I was the horse girl in high school. I had the horse t-shirts and stuff, but I've never owned a horse. But horse riding is rather central to my medieval plot book. So I spent a lot of time researching horse hooves and how the forelock works and how the hair is, how you have to groom a horse and how you have to saddle a horse and what kind of saddles you're using. Are you using medieval racing saddles? Are you using a lady saddle? Are you using a European saddle or an American saddle? Or how big is the horn? Do you use the horn? Are there reins? So if you're going to write anything, make sure you know it so you don't look like a fool.
What's an expedition scene?
Oh, did you say exposition or expedition?
Exposition.
So exposition is his
So
background.
Okay, so an exposition scene is like it's an explaining scene is how I remember it. It's a scene where, say you have a character that's about to learn a whole bunch of information that's relevant to the plot. Like some big baddie is coming back from something and they learn a whole bunch of stuff that's going to help them. The scene where you write where it explains everything that they're learning or all the backstory or stuff those are exposition scenes because you're explaining a whole bunch of information that's relevant to your plot.
Where do you start your process of writing?
Do you mean like literally like where do I start in the book or how do I like get the idea?
Where do you start in the book?
I literally start from the beginning. I write by the seat of my pants. I just sit down and go once upon a time, basically, and I just start from there. When I start getting confused about what I'm doing, I'll write out like a graph. I have, right now for my second book, I have half of my office wall is taken up by a bunch of papers and graphs and storyboard notes and stuff. But in the beginning, I just find a character I want to talk about and I just start, and then usually that'll lead me somewhere, and then I'll put some thought into it and figure out what I'm doing. But for the most part, I just kind of start at the beginning and see what happens.
Where do you get your ideas?
Usually weird dreams. I have very weird dreams. I have very active imagination. So usually like when I'm bored, so I drive a lot in my job, especially since I work the gray shift. At some point, nothing happens and I'm just driving around. And I daydream quite a lot. So I will just take plots of other stories that I've read or plots of my own book or stuff that's happened earlier, and I just imagine really crazy scenarios that'll never happen in real life, and then at some point one of those turns into a story that I write down later.
Same.
Besides the characters, how does your job as a police officer affect your writing?
I think it helps a lot with the fighting. Sorry, there's a big echo, so if I pause talking, it's because I'm listening to the echo. A lot of it is with the fighting. That helps a lot. I haven't been in a lot of fights, but I've been in a couple. Broken finger. So it helps me with the fight scenes and like just some of the grittier parts of life. Because like I grew up pretty privileged. I mean, I grew up poor, but pretty privileged in the retrospect of everything. So it helps me relate to just people, and I can write scenes that I haven't experienced. And also, if your characters interact with each other in a believable way, they're not gonna read it well. So it helps a lot with getting the characters to interact and like the dialogue, because like everybody talks in a different way. Everybody's got a different dialect. Everybody's got different mannerisms. Everybody moves differently when they speak. They say different things with the same words, right? Depending on their inflections and stuff. So it's to me, right? I think my dialogue has gotten a lot better because I can imagine that I arrested last night for being drunk, and I can imagine his speech pattern, and so I can put it into that character, and he sounds real because I'm basing it off of a real dialect.
Hi. So, since you're like a full-time cop and all, when do you typically write during the week? Like, do you write on your day off? Do you write when you get off work, or?
So it depends. I normally work the grave shift, so I'm usually working 9 to 7, and then I'm passed out for the rest of the day. But when I wake up in the evenings, I'll usually write, or on my days off. My days off I usually spend doing stuff with my fiance. So usually it's when I'm awake in the evenings because she's not home yet. And that's when I'll write, or if I'm super bored at work and nothing's happening, I'll maybe take like a 15-minute break and jot a couple of things down and not tell anybody. But it's hard to juggle, especially with the grave shift, because you are on such an opposite from everybody else. So you just have to take your moments when you find them and write and go from there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
About how often is it that you'll start something and you'll get like really far through it, and then you'll just kind of drop it and never really get back to it?
All the time.
Reasonable.
I probably have like 5 or 6 stories that I was like, these are going to be books and it's going to be awesome, and they're just sitting on my files folders like unfinished 50-page things all the time.
How often do you go back and revise something?
all the damn time. So this might be a thing that like writers do, or it just might be my thing, I don't know. But when I get bored and I can't write, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm completely stuck, I'll go back and I'll reread my own stuff, like some weird fanfic girl rereading stuff, and I will end up like editing things over and over and over and over again. So I had to start this rule where I don't reread my own stuff until I'm done, or else all I will do is re-edit other scenes. And I was like, this is a really fun scene, and I'll just read it over and over and over again, and I've changed it 15 times. So I always edit things all the time, and it's good too, because let's say you write something back on page like 10, and then by the time you get down to page 150, your character has changed, her motives have changed, the plot has changed, and so if you don't go back and refresh what you've already written, you might not notice that you have this incontinuity between what she was and what she is. And so it's good to reread and edit things, just don't impulsively do it like I do.
What is your book called that's going to be published?
Oh, it's called Shadow's Voice. I'm very excited.
So like what just now that you're with like a publishing house that's better, that isn't just a
Yes.
vanity, publishing press, do they promote your book at all? Like, are there ads for it anywhere? Do you have to like go and do talks at Barnes and Noble? Like how is it getting out there, or is it?
So Okay, so, well, I'm super early into the progress right now. But eventually, they will promote it for, and usually every publishing house will promote it for a certain period before they have to move their money to the other one, right? So they will promote it for the first 90 days, and then after that, it's kind of as I request their help. But even the authors that are picked up by Daw or Thor or Bain and like they're big name publishers, you still have to promote your own work. I mean, almost all of the work falls on the author nowadays, especially since we have to compete with Amazon. I mean, I love Amazon, but Amazon kind of screwed independent authors a little bit. So a lot of it is going to like your local bookstores and giving them that free book and being like, hey, who likes fantasy? Will you read this? And then stick it up on your employee recommend shelf. Or going to other like small bookstores in your town and putting out the little like promo flyer that you have, and emailing people and asking if you would be willing to have me come and see, or can I host an event for you, or doing giveaways. And a lot of it is run by you with your publishing house helping you. So anybody who thinks that you're gonna get picked up by a publishing house and then just sit back and watch the sales roll in, it's a lot of work. Even after, I mean, even if you have like 6 books down the chute and you're writing book number 7, you're still arranging for things. You still have to get. I mean, you might have an agent do it or a publicist do it for you, but you're still having to arrange all these things yourself. Once it gets closer to having a date, I don't even have a date yet. It's still really early in the process. So once I have a date, I'll have promo papers and there'll be ads, and there's already a pre-order option that you can do, and then there'll be more pre-order options and stuff like that. But that's usually how the process kind of works.
Do you like that whole process of like taking your book out there and like you organizing these events? Because that to me sounds like what hell is. Like,
yes,
here's my book, please read it, please, please, please.
Yeah, basically, I feel like I'm begging people to read my book.
Yeah.
Like, I spent all of yesterday watching YouTube videos about how to market your book and how marketing is dead for the indie author, and I have notes all on my couch. So, I mean, I hate doing it. I hate talking about myself. I hate trying to promote my own stuff. I'm too introverted for that stuff. So it's really difficult for me, but at the same time, find what works for you. So like, I am also crap at the whole technology thing. Like, this is very exciting for me. I did not know you could do this. Right. So clearly the online stuff is not going to be my shtick. Okay. So find what works for you. If going in person's easier, then do more in-person stuff. If you're a genius at like internet stuff, then do the internet stuff. So really just find what works for you. I hate all of it. So.
Do you have to work today?
No, not well. I have to go to court today, but I don't have to actually work today.
Do you have to like testify in court or?
I have no idea. Today I think is a prelim, so hopefully not.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. Far out. Any other questions? Anything goes. We got a couple minutes left here.
Okay, I have a question. Do you write anything
Sure.
other than like the stuff you write now? Because like I write poetry, but like I have like narratives and stuff that I have a big interest in stuff like that too. Like, do you write other stuff?
If I had more time, I would write short stories, but I just don't have time for that right now. But yeah, always explore. Just because I write fantasy, or if you write poetry, doesn't mean that's all you can do. I mean, if you find an interest in something else, well, that's not true. I am writing a memoir, so I mean, if you want to write something, write it. Doesn't matter if it's your genre or not. So I mean, just because I'm a fantasy author, that's how I brand myself. But I'm still writing a nonfiction memoir. I still have short stories, and I have a couple really bad poems saved somewhere. So I mean, if you have the interest to write it. It doesn't matter what genre it is.
How did you break your finger?
So we were trying to arrest a suspect, and he stole my taser, and he bent my finger backwards in the process. Yeah.
Did he do any damage with the taser?
No, luckily I was able to turn it off before I was trying to reholster it. And he managed to grab it and like twist my finger like all sorts of backwards and stuff. He tried, but I had turned it off and he didn't know that there's a switch, so he didn't do anything with it. But it was a butt fucker moment for sure when he pointed it at me.
Anybody else? Any last minute questions?
When your book is published, can you come visit us?
I would love to try to come visit you.
A year and they haven't? Yes, Natalie, I'm throwing shade at you guys. I haven't.
What?
You guys come visit me for so long and they haven't. So maybe she'll come visit you.
Well, maybe we can get our broke school district to charter you a plane to come out here. Does that sound reasonable?
Oh yeah, I work for quite a broke department, so yes, I will try. That would be super cool to come back and do an in-person visit with my first little Q&A group. So I will certainly try. That would be awesome.
Before we disconnect, I'll get your email address, and if anybody has any questions that they forgot to ask or anything that they didn't want to like stand up and ask in front of the group, would it be okay if I had them email you?
For sure. I've also created Get with Erin. I made a little like event thing on my author Facebook page. And so if you want, you can go onto there and we can continue the discussion, or you can just email it to me if you don't want to ask it in the public forum. So sure, go for it.
Sweet, cool. And I'll post this up on Google Classroom if you guys have any interest in that.
Yeah, before you guys leave, once we disconnect with her on Skype, I'll put her author page up on TV, so you'll be able to see it.
You are awesome.
Well, yeah, this was fantastic, and a lot of the stuff you said is going to feed into our next unit. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.